This is the Chris Project, where we discuss mental wellness, self-awareness, and mindset with entrepreneurs and experts. Set your perceived ideas and biases aside, and let's go on our journey for yourself, for your family, for the world.
Welcome to another episode of the Chris Project. I am your host, Christian Brim. Joining me today, the esteemed Randy Gage. Randy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for bringing me in.
Did you know you were esteemed?
My mom thinks so.
Okay.
But as I told you in the green room, I was, as soon as Sam, my assistant, sent it to me, I was very intrigued with wow, somebody is doing a show about mental health skewed to entrepreneurs. And I think that's really important work because I end up doing a lot of work like that with what I do.
Yeah, so you started to in the green room. Tell me what you do with the Accelerator University. So let's start back there.
Right. So 3 levels. Level 1, people, they don't have prosperity consciousness. They got a bad operating system. They're self-sabotaging. They're just, every time they take a step forward, they take 2 steps back because of the bad programming they got. Mm-hmm. Step 2 or level 2 is people like they're after it, they're working, but they can't quite break that $1 million a year barrier, let's say. So that's the middle level. And then the top level is what I call the anarchist level. And these are the rebels and the misfits and the, crazy people, the delusional dreamers who are crushing it. They could be flying private with 5 homes. They could be, I got a social media guy who's doing 15 billion views a year. I mean, whatever they do, they're doing it at a high level. And a big part of what brings them to me, I think, is the mental health side of it. Because I have this little niche that I've staked out of the holistic view of success, the holistic view of prosperity. And it isn't just about your next IPO or what your valuation is or how many exotics you can park in your garage. And 30 to 40% of the one-on-one time that I have with them, I would guess 30%, maybe it's 40%, is dealing with the mental health issues.
Okay, so let's clarify something. When you say, because I'm not an expert, so let's define terms. When you say mental health, what do you mean by mental health? Because that could be a lot of things. You're not necessarily talking about clinically mentally ill.
And let me be very clear to everybody listening or watching. I am not a mental health professional. I am a high school dropout. So I'm not giving any psychological advice to anyone. What I am is a guy who has spent decades studying the science of human behavior. Why do we do the things we do? And I'm a guy who started in a jail cell for armed robbery at 15 years old, who went on to build a multi-million-dollar worldwide empire and a life, more importantly, a life I love.
Right.
And relationships I love, and peace and harmony and that stuff that I love. And that's kind of that niche I kind of carved out, is that, okay, great, you're doing $300 million this year. You haven't made love with your wife in a year and a half. What's wrong with this picture? Okay, great, you're going to go public in 6 months and, and your kids couldn't pick you out of a police lineup. What's wrong with this picture? Or okay, great, you got the health, you got the, or you got the relationships, but you're 2 Big Macs away from a heart attack.
Right.
What is all that money going to do for you then? So my the mental, when I say I'm dealing with mental health issues, what I see is a lot of entrepreneurs come to me and they haven't figured out the purpose element. They're like, hey, I brought my son into the company. He's the CEO now. I'm giving him, I've given him all kind of rein and leash, and he's growing the company, and we're up 20% year after year on year. But I kind of don't know what I'm supposed to do. Or, yeah, I just had an exit. Money thing is completely out of the way. I don't know what to do with my life. I don't know. My wife doesn't want me around the house anymore. My husband doesn't want me around the house all day. I don't know what to do next. So I believe there's 4 quadrants to prosperity. And one of them is what I label in my books as significance. That as entrepreneurs, if you really get after it and you do it and you excel at it, you will reach a point where you will want to move from success to significance. And know, like, hey, my life mattered. If I leave the planet tomorrow, the planet is better because I was here. Or, I altered the trajectory of the universe, even if it was only by 2 millimeters, it's 2 millimeters better. And so those would be the things, like when I say the mental side of it, those would be the kind of things that I'm seeing. And sometimes just depression, just deep depression, because they're chasing one quadrant, success, meaning just the money and success part of it, and they're not looking at the health and the other 3 quadrants.
Yes, I think my observation and my own experience is that I don't think entrepreneurs really understand their motivation, internal motivation, starting out, like, why are you even doing this, right? In some sense, it's innate, like the ability of an entrepreneur to see an opportunity and envision a solution where the world is different, right? That is innate. And so, but then once you decide on a problem, like, I'm going to fix this and I'm going to, solve this problem and create value, it becomes the tail that wags the dog. Because there is no internal motivation beyond, this is just who I am, right? Like, to your point, how is the world better by me solving this problem, right? Is this a problem I even really care about? And that's different for everybody. But what I think happens in a lot of cases, and it certainly happened in mine, one of my 2-time guests on this show, Dr. Patel, he exited his company for 9 figures, was depressed. He was in his 40s, and he's sitting around with generational wealth, and he's like, what do I do? And what he did was he went back and got a doctorate in psychology, and is working to open his own clinic for entrepreneurs, right?
Wow.
Yeah. But in those conversations, we've talked about how, as he put it, entrepreneurs don't have good coping skills. And I never heard it put in a clinical sense like that, but I'm like, yeah, that absolutely is right. And then I had this insight, and I immediately said, and the business is oftentimes their coping mechanism. I know for me personally, like, I can see this backwards. There were a lot of reasons and motivations to be an entrepreneur and to build a business, but the foundational thing that was underneath it that I didn't see until much later in life was that it was a coping mechanism for me to not deal with those fears. I was covering them up with success.
Right. So let's just make sure, because I'm a writer, so words are everything to me. Let's make sure that everybody listening knows that when you say it was a coping mechanism. It was really a not coping mechanism.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
You
Yeah.
know, because in other words, like that's what our brain does, right? When it buries a traumatic thing that we just can't deal with. That's a coping mechanism, right?
Sure.
It's the language we would use, but we're not really coping with it. The brain is saying, let me close this down for the moment because you don't have the resources to cope with this appropriately right now. And that what you're saying, you're describing, I see that a lot with my clients that they're workaholics, and I'm like, okay, great. You're proud of being a workaholic. I don't know why. Would you be so proud to be an alcoholic or a drug addict? Why are you so proud of being a workaholic? Because it's the same shit. It's just a different venue, but it's
social
not
and
a
it's
good
socially
thing.
acceptable, right? It's socially acceptable to be a workaholic. I mean, that may be changing a little bit now in the current environment, but all of my adult life as a male, like that was perfectly acceptable behavior.
You were alpha male. That was a good thing.
Right. It another guest on here that I would recommend if you haven't read his book, Michael Brody Waite. He wrote a book called "Great Leaders Live Like Drug Addicts," and he took his addiction recovery and the things he learned in that, and then when he became an entrepreneur and eventually sold his company, the book is about how the principles that he applied, and reading it and implementing those things into my business. What I've come to this thesis, and see what you think about it. I think in some sense, all of us are addicts in that we have things that we use as coping mechanisms, some socially acceptable, some not, to avoid the fear that we're not dealing with. What do you say?
I do. I agree with you. We do that. And I think it's a self-protective mechanism, and sometimes it's healthy. But the real work comes when you find somebody qualified enough to work with you so you can work through that and realize, okay, no, there was a time this served me, but that time has passed, and now it's time to let it go and move forward and do the deep work and the difficult conversations. I have people that I have to say, okay, we have to start with a baby step here. I need to introduce the concept of a no device day to you. And they look at me like I just called their mother a whore. Right? Because they're like, do you have any idea? I'm running a business over 27 countries, $200 million a year from this cell phone in my pocket. I'm on call 24/7, satellite. I don't go anywhere. I'm off Wi-Fi. I'm like, that's miserable. That's not a way to live. You have to learn to create a self-managing business at some point if you want to create peace and prosperity in your life. And it's going to start with you telling your team, Sundays is a no device day. You can text me, call me, email me, all you want. Just know I'm not going to see any of it until Monday when I go back to work and I open it up after my off day where I was with my spouse and my children, and I unplugged from the drama and the trauma, and I lived the life like the real people live.
Yeah.
And you start with that. And then you okay, it's been 17 years since you actually took a vacation. Let's start making a plan for how you could create a vacation. It's like
and how resistant
step.
To that are they?
Like cat you're spraying a garden hose at. They are just fight me tooth and nail. I got to word this carefully because I want to throw anybody under the bus. I love the guy. I love him. He's one of my clients at the anarchist level. and he's got a company worth a fortune, and he's 25 years old. And it is weighing on him so heavy because he has no experience in management. He's
Right.
he's a brilliant genius in what he does, but he doesn't know the company side of it. He doesn't
Right.
know the business side of it. And he's a typical 25-year-old. He spends 16 hours a day on his phone watching 30, 60, 18, 90-second video clips all the time. And so he has the attention span of a gnat on double espresso.
Yeah.
And he's talking about something with his company, and I'm saying, God, Ben, God, what's his name? Horowitz. Ben Horowitz has got an amazing book for CEOs or God, Mark Andreessen has or hey, there's a book called The Messy Middle by Scott, I forget his name, but this, and he's like, I can't read. I just can't read. I can't. I try, but 5 minutes, I can't. And I'm like, we have to get you to the point where you can do 20 minutes of reading every morning, because there are resources here. And you can't go to Claude and say, give me the summary of this book. It's not the same thing.
You have to read it. You have to analyze it, synthesize it.
Yeah, synthesize, percolate, right? And then the other thing is that I'm just on a warpath with all my people is deep work. You've got to have the mental capacity to do deep work, which means devices off or phones off and just one device. If you're like me, I'm a writer. So deep work for me is often writing my next book on my laptop. But if I'm checking my phone every time there's a CNN breaking news alert and Facebook, because, your ex, went out on a water ski trip with, whatever. It just, or you're watching a bunch of TikTok videos and 30 seconds each, you lose that ability. And you can't build a great company if you can't do deep work. I believe you can't build a great life if you can't do deep, because sometimes the deep work is with your spouse, or you could go to dinner together, have a date night, leave the phones off, and have a conversation with them without a device in the room. That's how relationships grow and nurture. But honey, you got to take this one. This is, the president of the board. He wants a quick thing. And, let me just handle this email. No, that's not going to work.
I want to hear your origin story before we go any further. So I've got snippets of it from the videos I've seen. If you wouldn't mind summarizing your origin story for our listeners.
Single mom, raised 3 kids. I was the middle kid. She raised 3 kids by herself, knocking on doors, selling Avon. Back in the day when you really knocked on doors.
Right.
Hi, I'm Gage. I'm your Avon lady. Can I leave you this catalog? And then I'll be back next week and see if you would like to try anything. I mean, that's what she did. And I didn't know it. She didn't know it. But I'm on the spectrum. We didn't know what the spectrum was in those days. So my mother, my teachers, my counselor, they just like, Randy's just weird, Maybe he's slow. Maybe he's a little retarded. Maybe he's different. I don't know. But there was, autism wasn't even a diagnosis until like 85. So I didn't know how to articulate it, but I knew I was different and I didn't fit in. I mean, I had my theory, which was the aliens from another planet had dropped me on her doorstep in a basket, and she opened the door one day and said, "Oh, let me raise this baby."
Did you look like your siblings? I mean, you didn't have any reason to no evidence for that.
I look kind of like my brother, but not like my brother. And um, I had, younger kids, just very young at that age. And I just knew I didn't fit in with these other people. I wasn't like the other kids in school. I wasn't like the other people in my family. I just knew something was different. And that kind of came to a head when I was 15. So I was a teenage alcoholic, teenage drug addict, and ended up in jail for armed robbery at 15. And one day there's like keys jangling and the cell door opens and this guy comes in. And he is the father of a girl that I had gone to school with. She dated my best friend. So she was like, go help Randy, he's in jail. So he comes in. I have no idea who he is. And he tells me, he introduces himself. His name was Baxter Richardson. And he was a school teacher. And he told me, you don't belong in here. You're capable of great things. And I told him he was full of shit. And he should have slapped me into the next week, but he didn't. He said, no, I called every single one of your teachers for the last 2 years. They tell me you skip school for 3 or 4 weeks straight. You show up the next day, there's a test, and you ace the test. Do you realize your reading comprehension level is higher than college people? And I didn't know that.
Right.
I just knew, like, God, this stuff in school is so stupid. Why are they wasting everybody's time? Why would I hang out here, But so that was kind of a seminal turning point where that was the first time somebody ever told me that I might be capable of great things. Because I was just believing all the labels that society was given on me, addict, dropout, delinquent, criminal, loser, whatever adjective, whatever noun or whatever they were assigning to me. And so I went out I was blessed. I had a public defender who believed in me, a judge who said, let's give this kid a chance, give him probation. If he makes it to adulthood without any trouble, expunged his record. And I took that chance. And being autistic helped in the sense, it's a blessing and it's a curse. It's definitely both. Ask anyone who suffers from it, benefits from it. It's both. But I knew, like, okay, just working for somebody 9 to 5 is not going to work for me. I need to have agency. I couldn't have articulated it that way, but I knew on a subconscious level I had to have agency. I needed to be able to create my own destiny. And so I became an entrepreneur. And so I have for 47 years or something, been an entrepreneur.
How did you land where you are as writer, speaker? I'll use the term coach. You can use a different label if you want. How did you end up here?
Serendipity. I got introduced to network marketing when I was 20 years old with the Amway Corporation.
Yes.
They drew those circles and showed exponential growth. And that was the most amazing thing I had ever seen, because if you took my family and traced every generation back to the Mayflower, every generation worked for somebody. Every generation traded hours for money. And this idea of being an entrepreneur and practicing leverage, it just, I was intoxicated with it. And I struggled for 5 years. I didn't make any money with Amway, but it was an incredible introduction to leverage for me. And then I became successful in network marketing. And then I started doing training for my team on, hey, here's how I did it.
Right.
And then other teams started to say, hey, could we come to your training that you do? And I'm like, yeah, give me $5 to cover the meeting room and the donuts and show up. And then people started saying, can we hire you and fly you to Chicago and you train our team there? Or, and so then I became a professional speaker without
Right.
thinking about it. And then so I'm doing all these trainings pretty much in just the United States at that point. And then everybody said, you got to write a book. You got to put your system in a book. So I think it was 96. I wrote my first book about how to be successful in network marketing. The book has sold more than 2 million copies in
Wow.
18 different languages. It's, it was what do you call the next printing like 18 times or something. And then I wrote other books, and then I started doing marketing seminars, and that weren't just for network marketing, but just marketing, direct mail, those kind of things, social media. I got big into that when it came out, and internet marketing, those kind of things. And then I kind of so at 40 years old, I had my first midlife crisis right on schedule. And I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. If I have to do another seminar on how you get a prospect's phone number, I'm going to just stick a fork in my eye. So I quit and I retired. I said, I'm going to race my Viper, I'm going to play softball, and I'm going to drink out of a coconut. I got the money thing out of the way. I don't need anything. I'm just going to retire. And that lasted like 9 months.
Well, that's
crazy.
pretty long. That's impressive.
Yeah, I was going crazy. So what kind of prompted it was there was a guy named Bill Gove. Bill Gove was the first president of the National Speakers Association. And he just adopted me when I joined that organization. For whatever reason, he saw something in this arrogant, obnoxious kid who, joined the profession.
So you had joined this group before you retired?
Yeah, I joined National Speakers Association in 1991.
Okay.
And these were a bunch of speakers who were like going around doing $3,000 speech gigs and, doing 80 or 100 a year flying. And I joined and I'm like, are you people crazy? I charge $20,000 for a speech. You're charging $3,000. I made $1.5 million last year. You guys are like scuffling along. So I was really arrogant, full of myself. And so that put off a lot of people in that. But Bill, for whatever reason, he no, this kid's got it. And he just adopted. He was like the father I wished I would have had, maybe. And so he calls me up one day. He says, we got to meet for lunch. All right. So I go and meet him for lunch. He looks me in the eye and he says, you are the greatest speaker in the world. And I know because I used to be him.
Okay.
I get chilled even now thinking about it, right? And I'm like, I get what you're saying, Bill. I love the platform. I love the impact. But I can't do this marketing. It's just too boring. There's no meaning there for me. And I said, to me, the important work is the prosperity work, the mindset work, the what you have to wrap your brain around to be good in business. And he said, so teach that. Like, wow, I never thought that.
Oh.
So I opened up the business again, rebuilt a new multi-million-dollar speaking business, coaching, training. I just published my 16th book, that one behind me there, Wealth Without Apology. And I started just teaching and working in the principles of prosperity. And then just found I really am just kind of skewed toward entrepreneurs. That's my tribe. And I want to help speakers and authors and solopreneurs, and then later bigger companies, those execs, the founders. Like, I want to show them how they can create a prosperous life.
I love that. I'm going to ask a question, and you are welcome to demur. Did you ever have a relationship with your father?
No, never met him.
Okay. If you will let me tug on that thread for a minute, how do you think that? Because you talked about two men in this interview that had an impact on you and said they saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself potentially. How is that thread played out? Like how do you think the absence of a father relationship has impacted your journey?
I mean, you can't know. It's like you watch the Star Trek show where they go back in time and this person didn't get hit by a bus and that changed the whole course of human history, right? You never
Right.
know. What I can tell you is that I wouldn't change anything about my life. Getting in jail, being an addict, losing a business, being diagnosed HIV positive, getting shot and left for dead. I have had a fascinating life with a lot of drama and trauma along the way. But I wouldn't, if I was doing it all over again, I wouldn't want to change any of it because I'm so happy with the end, not the end destination, the current destination that I'm at right now.
Okay, let me phrase it this way. Do you see a impact of any of those traumas that you described that has so you stipulate that you wouldn't change it because you see how it has formed you. Is there a common theme among those events that you see a commonality or a thread that has shaped you to be who you are?
For sure. Both those guys we talked about saw greatness in me before I could see it myself. And so I have taken that as my crusade to pay that forward. That's what my work, every time I write a book, that's what it's about. Every time I record a podcast, that's what it's about. I believe the world is in a very difficult place right now. We need to make the world more prosperous. And after a lot of reflection, a lot of zigs and zags and detours along the way, I have come to the belief that the only way we make the world more prosperous is we get the 8 billion people who are on Earth to think more prosperous. And I don't think we can do it with charity. I give a lot of money to charity. That's one of the biggest line item. That is the biggest line item on my tax return every year. And I believe in mentoring and all of that stuff, and I do a lot of that. But we can't do it with charity. Charity is a bandage. It's not the solution. It's not the cure. And we don't do it with entitlement programs. We do it by empowering people. So all my work for maybe the last 5 years, it's all to that end. How do we empower people to create a better operating system that they use for their life so that they can be more prosperous? Because look what's happening in the States right now. We have the wealth taxes. We have the billionaire taxes. I went to my softball practice and my center fielder shows up with a T-shirt that says billionaires shouldn't exist. I'm like, okay, what's the plan here? Because I'm trying to become a billionaire right now, is the plan, if I become a billionaire, then we're going to kill me? Or is the plan, when I become a billionaire, we're going to take all my money away? I mean, how does this work exactly? What's your theory of the case, right? Why is all this happening? All this is happening because the gulf between the wealthy and poverty is so vast. It's happening because all of the money is going to my generation, the baby boomer generations. The people who are millennials, Gen Z, you can bleep this out later, they're fucked. If you're a Gen Z trying to make it in the world right now, you're fucked. That system is so stacked against you. For the ability for you to own a house is so much worse than it was for your grandparents. The ability for the credit card debt and the student loan debt you're going to have by the time you're 22 is so much worse, bigger percentage of your income. Yet we live in the greatest time in human history. Like these kids in my entrepreneur program, I told you about the 25-year-old
Right.
guy. I have another one. I'm like having a contest, like, okay, who's going to be a billionaire first in this program, right? In this latest book, I propose that I think it might be easier to become a billionaire today than it is to become a millionaire, just because of the magnitude of scale, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, if think about it, if you get a call from someone and they say, "Hey, Christian, I've got an AI project and we think we're going to be able to solve protein folding or predict heart attacks 2 months before or blah, 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 blah. And we need, we're looking for investors and we could give you a slot for $200,000 or for $2 million." Same day, you get a call from your cousin. He say, "Hey, I've got this Italian restaurant and looking for investors, and I need $10,000, and I'll give you 30% of the equity."
Right.
You don't want the fucking Italian restaurant. You don't want the $10,000 one. You want the $2 million one, right?
Right.
It's easier to raise $2 million than it is to raise $10,000. It is, and I've proven this, by the way, it is easier to run $1 million a year business than it is to run $100,000 a year business. It's easier to run $100 million a year business than it is to run $1 million business, right? And so what I'm trying to get across to these later generations is, hey, the system is totally stacked against you, but you don't have to play that game. You can learn the rules of the game, that they change all the time, that are stacked against you, and you can set your own rules. And you could become a billionaire, or you could start the nonprofit that transforms the world, or you could achieve this level of success in this particular artistic endeavor. And that's the game today. The empowerment game.
Yeah, I think you use the phrase "question the premise." Christopher Lochhead uses the term "reject the premise," and this applies to both entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs. But the belief that you have, and you alluded to this earlier, you are not your beliefs. Your beliefs are something that you have been given. Someone's given them to you either consensually or not consensually, right? We all come into the world as blank slates. And so the things that we know to be true, and I'm not talking about science here. I'm talking about, even around prosperity, like, we shouldn't have billionaires, right? That's a belief, right?
Yeah.
And the question is it a belief that serves you? And someone that said, well, there shouldn't be billionaires, like, okay, but how does that serve you, right? Like, that doesn't change your life, does it? And as a matter of fact, it could change your life in ways you haven't even considered if billionaires didn't exist, right? But questioning the premise and rejecting the premise, because I think a lot of times the premise is predicated on a system whether it's education or healthcare or home ownership or whatever, that is built by somebody else for somebody else, right? It's not for you. It doesn't have to be for you. I mean, like, when's the last time? And I'm not arguing anything you said about that, but like you talk about home ownership. When's the last time you heard of people going out into the country and building their own house like the Amish, where the community comes in and puts it up in a week and it's done, right? Well, that rejects the whole premise that you've got to go buy a house that's already there and you've got to use a mortgage to finance it and be indebted like that. That's what needs to happen more than any time in human history, I think, right now, is we need to question the premise. We need to make sure that we understand why we're acting and why we believe what we do.
100%. If Forgive me for doing a shameless plug, but let me give a shameless plug for
Please.
that book, Wealth Without Creation, Without Apology, Wealth Without Apology. It's my thesis kind of distilled into, we have to stop feeling guilty for wanting to be wealthy and healthy and happy and successful. It's all bullshit mind viruses you were infected with before you were 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Money is bad. Rich people are evil. It's spiritual or noble to be poor. To have a successful career, you have to be a bad mommy. To run a successful company, you have to rip off the employees and plunder the environment. These are mind viruses, and most people are infected with, like you said, we're born clean, but we got them somewhere, voluntarily, involuntarily. I believe it's involuntary. I actually call this, I'm working on a new book about this, and I've got my blog for anyone interested. Just check out the blog on randygage.com. But I define it as the inherited memeplex encoding, IME, because you inherit that. When your parents say, we may not be rich, but at least we're honest.
Right.
What have you just been programmed with? You have been programmed that rich people are evil and poor people are noble.
Right.
You didn't know you got that programming because you're 5 years old, but you got it and you don't know that you have it. So now you're 27 or 37 and you're working to create success and you self-sabotage yourself
100%.
because you don't know the programming is there.
100%. Yeah, one of the seminal books that I recommend is an old one, is Rich Dad Poor Dad by Kiyosaki, because I read that right out of university and I graduated with a degree in accounting and I thought I was a financial professional. And I start reading that book and I'm like, I started questioning the things that I had learned as a professional. Like maybe, and that's how wild it can be. Like you can choose to learn something and then be taught something incorrect anyway, like from the establishment, and it's supposed to be for your benefit, but it's like, yeah, wild.
You know why this book is blowing up right now? Financial planners. They are buying them 100, 200, 300 at a time. Some of them are giving them to their clients and saying, if you want me to keep working for you, you have to read this book because your ideas on money and wealth are so crazy that I'm not going to be able to help you if you don't read this. Some of them are gifting it to wealthy people that they would like to have as clients.
Right.
And say, hey, I just think this book, I think you'd appreciate it. You swim in these waters. You would get a lot out of this. I'm actually, is it USB, the big company, financial planning?
Yes.
I'm speaking for their clients in 2 weeks. They said, we want you to talk to all of our clients 35 and under, because they are They have no idea about the money game, and we want you to teach them the principles in this book. So
Yeah.
that this book is blowing up in big part because of financial planners who would be the first to agree with what we've talked about this whole show. Like, yeah, the money system is skewed against those people. Most people don't know they're rigged. The rules are against them. You know, when those nice credit card companies sends you the letter and say, your balance is $15,000, but we like you so much. If you just pay $81 as the minimum payment, that's fine with us because you're nice, we're nice.
Right.
Those people are not your friends. Those
No.
people want you to be an indentured servant for 40 years and
Yes.
pay, 8 times that amount with all the interest and carrying charge, right? So my book is about blowing that up for people. And so it's getting a big lift from the financial planning sector right
Yeah,
now, which is
that makes
a pretty
sense.
cool thing. Because they could have rallied against it, right? They could have felt threatened, and they, like you mentioned Kiyosaki's book. I think it's a great book, but when I first read it, I didn't even know what to do with it because
Yeah.
my financial literacy was so non-existent that I
Right.
didn't even understand what an asset was,
Yeah. Well, and going back to the mindset thing, it wealthy is 100% a mindset because I'll use my father-in-law as an example, but there are other people out there that this describes. He's in his 80s. He has more money than he could ever spend, and he won't spend it on himself. My wife is like, Dad, you've been talking about getting X, Y, and Z. Why don't you just do it? Well, and it starts making excuses. Why? Because he has a poverty mindset, even though he's wealthy, right? And that happens. You see this all the time,
You're
especially.
giving a book report on one of my chapters. I
Still
mean,
need to read
I
it.
see it all the time. My own mother. I'm like, Mom, my brother's died. My sister's doing really well. She's met a guy who's wonderful. Second, her husband died of a brain tumor at a young age. Now she met a guy like 8 years ago. They're both successful. She just retired. She's doing great. I'm doing great. I'm like, Mom, we don't need any help. You don't have to leave us anything. We're both doing
Right.
great. You got a house that's completely paid for. You've got a retirement fund. You can do this stuff. Let's just, she's like, oh, my dishwasher is broken. And I just bought it 2 years. I'm like, it's $800. Buy I don't say fucking with her, but that's what I'm thinking. Just buy the fucking dishwasher. It's
Right.
$800.
Right.
I don't need your $800 when you die. My
Right.
sister doesn't need your $800 when you die, but she's not. So my sister and I have to buy her the dishwasher and make it a birthday present or a Christmas present or whatever, because that's the only way she'll take it.
Right. And I guess what I would reflect back is if you don't change your mindset, you'll never have enough money anyway. Like if you don't have a prosperity mindset, then you're never going to have enough.
Right. 100%. That's the other mental side of the equation is in the book, I call it divine discontent, which I believe is the ability to live in gratitude about where you are right now, living in total gratitude and having the desire to do, have, and become more.
Yeah.
And that's the sweet spot that I live in and I want the people I work with to live in. Because in nature, in every part of nature, stasis equals death.
Mm-hmm.
Stasis equals death. So If you just say, okay, I'm going to be, what do they call it? The ascetic, and I'm going to keep lowering my needs until they get to the point of my income, and then I'm going to be happy. I don't begrudge anyone if you want to go live in a monastery and pick berries and it makes you happy, I love it and I'm happy for you. That's not the life for me, although I considered it at one point. The life for me is I want to know that my greatest years are in front of me, not behind me. And that's what I think will pull the world forward when we have more of us who think that way.
Yes, yes, with like you said, gratitude for what you have. I think we have the most well off, historically speaking, poor people in this country than in all of human civilization, right? But it's in that
Yeah.
comparison to others that you end up with, no billionaires. It's like, and again, it's just a mindset, right? It's not about what you have or you don't have. It's that's not it. That's not it. Randy, where do people find your book? I mean, I'm assuming
Amazon,
Okay,
best place.
randygage.com. Buy it there.
RandyGage.com is my Starfleet command site, my podcast, my blog, my Entrepreneur Accelerator, all that stuff is there, my social media tags. And but the book, Amazon is the best place for the book.
Perfect. Listeners, I'll have that link in the show notes. If you like what you've heard, please rate the podcast, share the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. And until next time, remember, you are not alone.